Hi guys, we are back with Vincent Optimus Klerks, hailing from the Netherlands and playing full-time Starcraft at the moment, Terran. And we touched on your playstyle a bit and on your personal background. Coming to Starcraft, the game itself, are you excited for the new patch?
I've got pretty mixed feelings about the new patch. On one hand,
Okay.
I always like big changes because it keeps the meta fresh. It doesn't really have the CS:GO effect where you know everything what's going to happen, and it comes down to execution. At least that's how it feels when I used to play CS:GO. Like everyone knew the meta and they knew what was going on. So I really like that, but there are some changes I kind of disagree with. But I'm on the other hand, I'm also interested to see how that works out. Right? It's pretty hard to tell from now how the meta will be in 3 months. So yeah,
Mhm.
I would say I'm pretty excited about it.
What what are you most excited about?
The mothership core getting removed for sure. It feels very it doesn't promote um I don't want to say skillful gameplay, but it kind of doesn't reward you for being on point. If it's kind of a free out of jail card, like, oh, I forgot to place units in this location. I've got a mothership core. I'll overcharge 4 pylons and defend this attack.
Hmm.
So I feel like there definitely needs to be some balancing because Protoss might feel a bit weak right now. But I kind of like it. I feel that Protoss players will need to be adjusting more and preparing more in general. And I do like those kind of changes for sure.
And regarding Terran?
Terran doesn't have too many significant changes, though the Raven change is pretty interesting, but
Hmm.
I'm not too big a fan of it. The removal of the auto turret, I feel like the Raven has really finally gotten a good role in the meta. It's used in 2 out of 3 matchups and sometimes even in TVP as well.
Hmm.
But I'm afraid that the Raven is not going to be as useful as it was for the past few months. But it's going to be interesting to find out for sure.
And I mean, they keep saying that if one of the changes turns out to be a bad decision, then they will maybe
Yeah.
remove it. And so, okay, so on the one hand, it's good that the mothership is getting removed, and the Raven change is you feel is a bit could be interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's gonna make Mac better, right? But I really
Sure.
like the harassment option of the Raven to have the potential to harass your opponent.
Yeah.
I feel like that unit has really gotten a good place in the meta. Though it might be a bit broken. The auto turrets are two-shotting workers. Might be a bit too overpowered.
I
But
mean I'm like I play gold on gold leagues level,
yeah.
so if I get rushed with mass ravens, then I hate them. I'm
Yeah.
playing Zerg, by the way. I'm a Zerg.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so sure. And like you said, just to change things up a bit, to keep things interesting. Um, on that regard, I also wanted to ask you. So okay, so you mentioned that the Raven change will be a bit tricky. Maybe will have an impact uh, on the mech and all of that. What is the one change that you feel is a bit negative? Maybe.
Let me actually open the changes just so I can because they did update some of the changes.
Sure.
1 second.
No, no worries.
Obviously.
That gives me time to drink my coffee.
All right.
Lucky for us, nobody's paying us.
All right. So they they did give the shield battery. Um,
Right.
that seems pretty interesting, but it might keep it too safe. It might kind of do the same purpose the mothership core did, like, oh, early game, oh, I didn't make a unit.
Hmm.
But it definitely feels more interesting, and it has pretty short build time, 30 seconds. I feel like
Hmm.
that's you can mix that in some build, like
Hmm.
as a transition when you're taking a third base, getting the shield battery up, um, and relying on some adepts to hold on while tacking up. I don't know. I think it's an interesting change, and the swarm host nerf is definitely required. I think they're way too fast on creep.
Mm.
Uh,
Very mobile.
um,
Yeah. Mm.
Ghost. That was a very interesting one. It starts with cloak now, so we can actually do ghost rushes now. That's gonna be an interesting. It's gonna be an interesting meta for the first few weeks. I think it's gonna be a big mess.
For
It's gonna be
sure.
very.
Yeah, especially in the tournaments. If I mean, obviously the patch will come after BlizzCon, but then
Yep.
after that it will get interesting. Yeah. What one thing that I found um, very interesting in the discussion of the Starcraft Remastered at one point was how I watched this show of In Control, Joff,
Mhm.
with Atosis and
Oh,
Noni
the
and so.
launch event.
Yeah, no, the launch
Ah,
event was fantastic also,
oh,
but the other one that he did on his
uh,
private channel. Um, but what I'm trying to say is, so they discussed uh, defining moments in StarCraft Remastered. So when something changed, or when somebody discovered something in the game
yeah.
that then and that changed everything, like Bisu with the DTs and all types of stuff. How do you feel? How is this in StarCraft 2? We are talking about the new patch. We are
Hmm.
talking about the changes. Mm, were there such moments for you as a player also, where you discovered something and thought, "Wow, this is now game changing for me, or maybe for everybody"?
Well, not so, I didn't discover it personally, but
Mm.
I think kind of the widow mine harassment in early Heart of the Storm, it wasn't really used as harassment. It was pretty defensively used,
Hmm.
and then people were like, "Well, we can drop this unit in a mineral line, and it doesn't have to only deal with the army. You can actually harass with it." I think that was a very interesting moment.
Hmm.
And also I well, I don't want to say it because it's a pretty bad one, but Broodlord Infestor. Well, once people figured that out, I mean, it had to be changed. But those kind of moments, like where someone really figures out something that is
Hmm.
very solid and works very well, those are always interesting in my opinion because
Hmm.
it shows that they've got it figured out. And if you can copy somebody that does a strategy very well, like innovation is not the most ideal to copy because he doesn't really play a strategy.
Hmm.
He just relies on his mechanics. But maybe someone like TY is a very good example. He really thinks about strategies. And at one point, I was really hoping he was gonna make the Battlecruiser meta in TVP work, but it never really picked up. It never really worked out because he did it once on Newkirk Precinct against.
But it was a TVT, no?
No, it was a TVP on Newkirk. I'm thinking of who he played. I think it might have been Stats, but he played
Yeah.
Battlecruiser Rush on 3 base, and I thought sometimes I still do it, or other people are doing it, but it never really works out. So I was always like pretty hopeful that that would work out. But those kind of strategies are very, yeah, I think those are very defining moments when someone really figures something out and manages to make it work, and it becomes the meta. But it's very difficult because nobody really knows who starts with it. Everyone kind of copies each other.
Hmm.
So, for example, the stim drop, we did it pretty early on, and then Björn did it as well, and everyone is like, "Well, who did it first, right?" But
Mm.
those kind of are very interesting for me
Hmm. Hmm.
personally as a player because I need to do the newest builds to catch your opponent off guard, right?
For sure.
So,
Or you take the very old stuff and throw it in there, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, I've actually done that in the past. Like during Heart of the Storm, I would sometimes do Wings of Liberty builds that make no sense in the current meta, and they would just work sometimes, even though they should never work. So I've done it in the past as well with Heart of the Storm builds in Legacy. That's
Sure.
really interesting.
If you catch your opponent off guard, no?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, not to get too technical, but I'm curious about that personally now, because there are two things that are comparable to me, or I always wonder. The carrier, for example,
Hmm.
was not really a thing for many years.
Yeah.
And at some point, suddenly, it became a late game unit again. And now a lot of people are playing carrier, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen with the Battlecruiser, like you mentioned now. Why? What would you say as a Terran player? Why is the Battlecruiser still not being used properly? Or is it
Um,
because of the unit, like the technical
I
side
think
of it, or?
I think it has to do a lot with two things: the mothership core and the map pool that allows carriers. Because people generally only go carriers on Abyssal and Acolyte, because there's a big distance. You can cover the base with pylons,
Mhm.
um, which allows you to be safe to tech up. And Acolyte sometimes makes battlecruisers work, though I think it's mainly map pool. I think the battlecruiser is in a great position right now, and it mainly comes down to the map pool and meta at the moment. And carriers are I've never seen somebody go carriers on Ascension or Odyssey, for example, because they are just too big maps for
Mhm.
carriers. So I think that's the most crucial part. At least in TVP it is. I'm not sure about CVP.
Mhm. So more the map, not the unit.
Well, I mean, it helps that the unit got a slight buff, but in general, I think it's mainly the map pool.
Mhm. Okay, good to know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm playing the lower league, so you get rushed all the time with all the with all weird stuff. So
Yeah,
that never works on high level Starcraft, obviously. So
yeah.
um, okay, yeah, cool. Thank you for that insight and that ideas, and also the comments on the patch. And we got a bit technical now, but I
Hmm.
think it's interesting for the people watching also
Yeah.
to get an insight of you from a pro player like you. So what gets you still really passionate about StarCraft? What do you really like about the game up until
Uh,
today?
well, I think for me, it's always been at least what keeps me really going is the fact that I see myself improve. I don't think there are too many players that are really like, oh, I really like StarCraft. It's an amazing game. But in general, they like the game, but they see themselves improve a lot, and that's what keeps them going. I think that's for most pros at least. I mean, everyone kind of likes the game. Do have some parts they don't like, but seeing yourself improve, it's one of the few games where you can actually look back at a month-old replay and see a huge skill difference already for yourself. At least for me, it still is because I'm still becoming a lot better every day
Hmm.
because I still got a long way to go. But I feel like that's for me has been 99% the drive to continue playing for sure.
So yeah, so the fact that you can improve and that you can track your improvements. Um, what else? I need something else maybe, or like why I'm asking. Sorry, that's maybe it's a bit of a weird question because why I'm asking is that I picked it up in the last interviews with the pro players that I mean like I think it was Kellerzur that for example he hates watching replays and he doesn't like see himself play because of certain reasons and
Hmm.
um, I think Nerchi also said at some point he actually didn't enjoy playing anymore and all that. So I always find it interesting what keeps you going. So I mean, obviously you
Yeah,
said,
for sure.
but where comes the enjoyment? Where do you enjoy yourself? Maybe also.
Well, it would be the main part, seeing yourself improve, but also, hmm, kind of like watching a VODs of yourself. Like
Um,
if I look, sometimes I'm a bit nostalgic and I watch gameplay VODs of like Heart of the Swarm, and I see somebody, I see my own game, and I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And just seeing the huge difference, I feel like
mhm.
having those, it's kind of like watching old pictures, right, of 4 or 5 years ago. It's a lot of fun. And every time I watch a big tournament or see someone who's not quite at the top do very well, it's a very big motivation boost for everyone who's not quite at the top to continue practicing. And I think it's a bit of a combined effort of all those three, four things
Mhm.
that keep the majority of pros going.
Yeah. So, Ayman, I find that very important. So, like you said earlier, if your name is not SOS or so, you will never be rich.
Yeah.
So it's always a bit tricky. Yeah. So interesting. Mm, I mean, StarCraft itself is such a competitive game. Also, I mean, have this one versus one, and I at the moment I'm playing a lot of Heroes of the Storm,
Mhm.
um, and you always have somebody to blame. Um, but
Yeah.
in StarCraft, you only have to blame. Can you blame yourself? So that's quite
Or
hard.
your opponent's
Or,
race, but
sure, 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 sure. Yeah.
that's also the interesting thing, and I think a big part of why StarCraft hasn't had that much growth compared to other games like League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, CS:GO,
Hmm.
Overwatch, is that it's a 1v1 game. It's a very, very harsh environment, and you cannot really say, "Oh, my teammate is not good at this game. It's only him that I'm losing to." It's 99% your own fault, and a lot of people find that very difficult, I think.
Mm. What? Yeah. So it's interesting the point that you're touching now. So um, one of the reasons, or one of the big discussions since StarCraft, probably Heart of the Swarm, is always why are we not the best and the biggest and whatever. But I think you're mentioning a very important point. It's like you have to be ready for that. You have to have
Mhm.
some form of enjoyment in competitiveness, and yeah, you have to handle the fact that you are actually that it's your own fault if you lose.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
I think that's the that as well as that RTS in general is not the most popular genre,
yeah.
and one that definitely you cannot watch a StarCraft game for the first time and be like, I know exactly what's going on. Like in, for example, CS:GO, everyone knows the AK-47. You kind of know what's going to happen. Oh, they have to plant the bomb, and they have to defend it. Okay, that makes sense. But I also think that's the interesting part about StarCraft is that there's such a deep learning curve that once you kind of start playing, there's a lot to learn, and it really feels like
Hmm.
the more you improve, the more fun it gets. I think
Hmm.
you discover new strategies, you discover even new units that you never used before, and I think that
Yes.
was for the majority of people definitely what hooked them to the game, for sure.
Yeah, very, very interesting what you're saying now. Um, so, uh, what would you say? Is there a need to make the game more attractive to people outside of our community, or do you feel we can just go on like that?
I mean, viewership has been kind of steady over the last few months, and it has kind of had a bit of a growth. People always say like, "Oh, the viewership used to be so much better," but that's kind of true for streams. But then I look at VODs of popular finals, like for example, is it the Beyond versus Dark VOD? It has like almost a million views,
Hmm.
or Elaser against Snoot from Valencia, it has like 50,000 views. And then I look at like Wings of Liberty VODs of popular finals, like for example MVP against Life, and it has like 20k.
Mm.
Um, I mean, there are some exceptions, like the Life versus Maru one that has an insane amount of views. I think it has 2 million or something like that. But
Hmm.
I think in general it's been kind of okay. And I mean, do we really need more people? I mean, it would be good for sure. A bigger scene is always healthier and better. But I think StarCraft, as it is right now, will definitely continue a few more years for sure. But growth is always important. But I think we can keep it going for now. I don't think the game is dying by any means. And with the influx of new players playing co-op over the last few years, I think it's fine for now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that uh, opinion and insight from your side. We will have a short technical break and then we will be back in a second.